So I feel like today is one of those days where like God is playing tricks on you, playing tricks with you for their own good. But I left my sermon at home, and I left my bag and all, and I had printed it, but then I had written it out in a notebook, so it was like, oh, hilarious. I got here and I was like, okay, I see you. I see what you're doing here. But I think it plays right into the message, of having humility and being able to say, okay, I made a mistake, and, we're going to work with this. So this story, this gospel passage about the Pharisee and the tax collector, again, just kind of starting with historical context here to help us shape what's really going on, what's the message at heart. So the Pharisee, often in hearing scripture, the Pharisee, oftentimes it feels like is the party who's there's something that Jesus is setting up against the Pharisee, that the Pharisee is not like us. But in this story, he's actually saying the Pharisee is probably more like us, like the people right here. He's saying the Pharisee at the time was the religious group that was most like Jesus. So Jesus would have been associated actually most with people like the Pharisees because they were teachers of the gospel, not like priests in the temples, but out in the community, out with the village, out with the people. And they're the people, right, like paying the tithes, and in the story, right, they're like, I'm coming, I'm showing up, and I'm paying my money, and I'm doing the good things that I've been told to do. But, right, their character is sort of boastful and a little bit arrogant about their good deeds. And then there's the tax collector, who maybe in like modern day we might think of as like the billionaire class. It's just people who have an enormous amount of money, and they're looking to profit off of the exploitation of laborers, and they're just not looking out necessarily for like the good, for the best interest of the people, right? They're sort of more self-concerned. And in this story, that's the tax collector's the one who's like asking for forgiveness, begging for mercy. And so just like think about that. Like think about like Elon Musk, like the image of Elon Musk being like, oh my God, I'm so sorry for all the things I've done and the people that I've hurt. And I want to turn a new cheek, I want to turn a new page. I want to have a new life. That would be quite remarkable and incredible. And like we almost couldn't believe it, right? So I feel like Jesus is often taking these caricatures of people and twisting them around to be like, well, one, this person is still capable of this sort of humility. And also, their act of humility is more just in my eyes than like the regular person going to church and paying their dues and being boastful about it, right? So it's like, it makes us go, wait, what? Okay, interesting. And I think when I'm thinking about humility, so I had this experience, I guess a couple weeks ago, where I felt like, oh, that was humility. Like I was writing a sermon, and I was stuck. I was like not sure. Just it wasn't feeling good. There was no flow state happening for me in that moment. And I just took a break, and I kind of sat down, and I was like, what's going on right now? Like, God, what's, like, help me understand. And what I needed to do was be humble. I needed to say, you know what, I don't know what to do. I'm not sure what to say. I feel stuck. I needed to pause and give myself that moment to acknowledge, and it actually hurts. Like, it hurts that I don't know, but I need your help. And there was like this opening that happened in that moment of just being sort of filled in with healing around that. And I took that space and I took that time to sort of sit and sort of just be in that moment. And I could feel the healing part of God come into that space. And then I was thinking, well, okay, that moment of humility is like pretty rare for me. It's not like every single day I'm like necessarily making space for that. So what is it about humility that is challenging for me? And then I was thinking about how closely related it feels like humility is to maybe shame, or they can rub up against each other in ways that maybe makes humility challenging for us. So when I think of shame, the words I hear are, I should have known better. I should have known better. And that should then justifies a way that I am going to beat myself up. You know what? I should have known that, and so now I don't deserve the love, I don't deserve the friendship, the compassion. I deserve a punishment. Like that shame to me says, I should have known better and I deserve a punishment. Where I think humility is very different than that. Humility says, I didn't know. I just didn't know. I wasn't sure. I have somewhere to grow. I have room to grow. I'm always growing. I'm always growing. And I deserve to have a place to start learning this thing. And so when I think of humility, I really think of like plants that grow and that just keep always growing. And that to see ourselves in this posture of humility is to just notice and remember that we are always in this growth process and to allow ourselves to be there. There is a story that came to mind when I was thinking about my own lessons of shame and humility. And what came to mind was that I was organizing a goddess retreat. And this was maybe like 10 years ago. Before I had done like my own digging on my own sort of gender identity, and I grew up in a very sort of narrow-minded place. So I have a lot of internalized everything, and so I did this retreat because I was trying to explore sort of the feminine parts of God, the feminine divine, the goddess spirituality that no one really ever showed me or taught me growing up. So I was exploring that part of myself and God through this retreat. But there was, so much I didn't know, so much I had to learn. But I knew God was like, you know what, it's okay, like, you're gonna grow through this. Like, this is a part, like, doing this will help you to understand that thing you're trying to learn, but you don't know it yet. And anyway, the first iteration of the invite to the retreat, I said the words, this is an invitation to people who are female born. And that was not the right language for me to use to be inclusive of trans women. And I did not know that at the time. And so my inbox was filled. The next day, I woke up, lots of messages, angry, some were gentle, but mostly upset. And, in that moment, we have a choice, right? We can get defensive and we can say, well, I didn't mean it like that. And like, come on, like, I have good intentions. And part of me probably did do that, but I had to think about what really mattered. And what mattered to me was that, like, this really offended some people. This really hurt people in using that language. And I listened to them, and I was like, okay, I have something to learn here. And I was like, I'm so sorry, and I'm going to change the invitation to say, identifies as female identifying. And it was amazing because all of the people then who were very, very upset with me, their anger turned to like deep gratitude, right? When we actually tell someone, you hurt me, and I would really like you to reconsider what you've said and say it differently, and then they do, I think the trust built so deeply between me and those people because they had an experience too of someone really listening and really willing to change what they change their perspective and be willing to learn and to grow. And so I think that's what humility invites us into, is this acceptance of our limitations and our need for others to educate us and help us to see the world around us. And my other hope was in embodying this kind of practice. I think sometimes I stand up here and I'm like talking about these things, but what I really want us to do is like have a conversation or engage in these things. And so I'm just going to invite us a little bit into like engagement. And so, do you? Oh, great. Well, let's engage. Yeah. You have a lot of thoughts? That's right. Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, the cost of our ignorance. Yeah, and I think that sort of continues on to like when we learn something, what do we do with it, right? Because it's not an automatic thing either that we learn something and then kind of act on that learning necessarily. So it also is like a very brave and courageous step to do, right, the work of that learning that we just came into. And I wish I knew the Timothy passage better to answer your question. I'm not sure. But I'd like to revisit that and look at that. So I'd like to invite us to bring up a memory or a experience of shame that we experienced maybe recently, like something that stung us or had us doing that kind of beating ourselves up thing. Does anyone have an example they'd be willing to share? Like something that's like ripe on your mind or heart? Or if you want to, maybe turn to someone around next to you or close to you. And we'll just take a couple minutes to like think about an experience of shame that you could have applied humility to instead. Like, where's that space? Find someone near you and just explore a memory of shame and how humility might have been could be applied to that. We'll just give you a few minutes. Okay, friends. I know that's not enough time, but hopefully you can continue those conversations during hospitality if you want. But I hope this is giving us some sense that humility is a really necessary part of our spiritual lives. And it really invites us into asking for help, acknowledging that we're not alone in anything, that we need to sort of humble ourselves and reach out. I think reaching out to God as a spirit, as a nourishment and a resource for us in times where we need help, but also reaching out to others and reaching out and admitting when we need other people to sort of help us make sense of something or help us carry something that's heavy. We deserve that. We deserve people surrounding us and helping us and taking care of us with us. So with that, I say amen.